this is actually part of a course. Oops, here we go. We're starting at the end. A course that is meant to be a 6-week long course. So I could tell you that that there's a lot of things that have been cut down, but I threw it together pretty quickly because some of the stuff that was on the other slides just didn't apply. One of the things that I love to do is if there's any questions along the way, feel free to ask. I'm going to try to go slow enough that it will make sense. But the fact that that we've got the slides and we've got a recording, you could actually go through and watch it again. So that's a good thing.
Oh, that's great. That'll be really great.
So let's jump in and get started. And I've got some great advice for our agenda. I'm taking some advice from Aristotle. He said, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. So you'll at least hear this 3 times and make it simple for you. So I start off with a top 10 list of why your LinkedIn profile sucks and exactly what to do about it. Or a more politically correct term is how to fine-tune your LinkedIn profile. So going through them very quickly, because we'll go through them in detail. Your LinkedIn photo is just not what it should be at all. Your summary, and they've changed the term for summary. They now call it the About Me section, is like the old TV series Dragnet, just the facts. You don't want that at all. Your profile is incomplete or out of date, and it's really amazing how many people don't have a complete profile at all. You don't have keywords in your profile, and I'll talk a little bit about that. You don't have a custom URL. LinkedIn gives you the ability to shorten it and customize it to you. You absolutely want to do that. You still have that default LinkedIn headline. I'll go into great detail about that. In fact, I would say probably 90% of the people do the LinkedIn default headline, and it's really a waste of really, really valuable space. No recommendations and no endorsements. Your profile reads like a resume. And you tend to use buzzwords or smart words, and that tends to dilute the value of what you're saying and makes you be like a whole lot more people on LinkedIn, and really you want to stand out. And then the worst part is you make it difficult for anyone to contact you with potential opportunities, or maybe even worse than that, your profile isn't public. You have the ability to keep your profile private, and some people do that. I'm not sure why they do that on LinkedIn, but some people do that. So let's jump into the profile. Now, if I go through and I look at LinkedIn today, and I was to scroll through, in fact, I thought about doing this, but I don't think we'll have enough time. I've got currently, I think, 928 connection requests. I don't have the ability to take that many, so but when I have the ability to scroll through and see how many of them have pictures. And it turns out that a lot of people have pictures today, but not everybody does. And so it's really important to have a good picture. Your photo's really the first impression, and you really want to make it your best. And a lot of people don't include a photo because they really don't like the way they look, and you know, they don't have a good photo that showcases them. And some people don't want to do it because they feel like they may be discriminated against. You know, I could fall into that category because of my age. But when you don't have a photo, it doesn't matter. You're really automatically excluded from a lot of considerations. So, and according to US News and World Report, they did a big survey of recruiters actually. And they said if you don't have a photo, people assume either one, you're really ugly, or you don't know how to upload a picture. In any case, it's probably not a good fit for employers or business partners. So you want to make sure you've got a good photo, and we'll talk about that in some greater detail too. So listen to this. This is really fascinating to me. When there's been eye tracking studies done, and there's fascinating ways to do this, they found that the first thing that people look at when they look at your profile is your picture. I don't know if that's really surprising, but what is surprising is they spend 20% of the total time they spend on your profile looking at your picture. They say that judge, you could judge a lot by looking into people's eyes, and a lot of people that are looking at your profile and evaluating, do I want to reach out to this person? Apparently are trying to do things like that. So if you just look at just those two things alone, tell me that having a good picture is not important. It really is critically important. After they're done looking at your picture, they look at your current job position and education. However, and this is from the eye tracking studies they've done, they seldom make it to your skills, specialties, older work experience, or anything else unless you give them a very good reason. And there is a goal that I talk about whenever I'm dealing with social media, specifically LinkedIn, but any social media. The goal of your engagement with your social media consumer is to get them to say in their head, I want to know more, or tell me more. The one thing that you don't want to do is you don't want to just flood them with facts and tell a full story, because it sort of takes away the mystery, and hey, I don't need to reach out to you anymore. But make sure you make it rich enough that they want to know more. So never use that default picture. Some people still do. I looked through 40 pictures today, and in the 40 pictures I looked through of people that are inviting me to connect with them, 2 of them had that default picture, which is just that sort of square, featureless person. So make sure you don't do that. As a matter of fact, I have a golden rule on connection request. If I get a connection request and it doesn't have a picture, I don't accept it. In fact, I don't even look further. Now, maybe I'm too judgmental about that, but I have over 29,000 connections, and I'm not looking for additional connections. And if they're not taking time, in my opinion, to put a good picture up there, I'm not really connecting with them. Another recommendation, and I don't know how many times I've run into this problem, is use a current picture. And if the picture is more than about 3 years old, look to get an updated picture. And you want that picture to be a close-up. Remember, people are trying to look into your eyes. They're trying to gauge whatever it is they gauged looking into your eyes about you. So make sure you've got a close-up picture. It's a professional picture, and it's only of you. Don't have a family picture in there. Don't have pictures with you and your pets, unless you're a pet sitter or something like that. Make sure the picture is just you. Make sure when you've got a background, in fact, if my picture's up on the screen, and I think it is, this would not be a profile picture, because if you look at my background on Zoom here, it is way too busy. There's just too much stuff there. And make sure the picture is not too dark. So you have to look at all those things. Also, and I see this quite a bit, is people are at a very impressive place. Maybe they're in front of, I don't know, they go to Paris and they're at the Louvre or Notre Dame or something like that, and they want to show off that they've been there, and they're in the foreground, but they're making sure they get that landmark in the background behind them. That doesn't do anything to help you with your profile. So make sure that that if you've got a background photo or a photo that you're trying to use like that, that you don't. So make sure it's employer ready. If this was something that would go on an employer badge, make sure it's a good picture, and make sure it also fills up the entire space. So a lot about your picture, but when people are spending 20% of the time looking at your profile just on your picture, you want it to be good. So as I mentioned, your summary, which is the About Me section now, is like and I really need to update this because I'm curious how many of us know that old TV series Dragnet. Lee
I
does.
do.
Oh,
I
but hey,
do.
how about you, Juan? Do you know Dragnet? Juan could shake his head no, so I'll have to find a new one. But Dragnet, Juan, for your edification, was a detective series show. I'd say a sitcom, But one of the statements that one of the detectives always would say is just the facts, ma'am. And so you want to make sure that you tell stories. And you've heard the statement a bunch is facts tell and stories sell. So you want to make sure you're telling stories, don't recite facts. So you might say, how do I do this? And there's some verbiage on here. Obviously, storytelling is a very powerful way to connect. People tend to remember stories. They don't remember facts. Now, if they remember some facts, they probably remember them as part of the story. So to the extent that you could tell a story, people are going to remember that story because it leaves them with an emotional feeling. They have an emotional response to it. And you've made a connection with them, and that goes back to that goal that I mentioned, where you want to leave them saying in their head or get them saying, I want to know more. And there was somebody that I'd worked with probably close to 10 years ago now, who was a data analyst. Boring job, right? How do you make being a data analyst sexy? And what she did was she told a story about it. She said, you know, when I was a little girl, I used to love to read Nancy Drew novels. And as a matter of fact, and in those Nancy Drew novels, by the way, she had a little red notebook. She'd go around and she'd make notes of all the neighbors and collect stories and all of that. And she'd solve cases doing this, you know, of the missing lawnmower or whatever it might be. But the lady said in her About Me section on LinkedIn, she said, I read the Nancy Drew novels and I loved them. As a matter of fact, when I grew up, I wanted to be Nancy Drew. And she said, well, I didn't get to be that detective. She said, but what I get to do is I get to investigate people's data. And I get to search around for mysteries and stories that are hidden in the data. And it reminds me of what I really wanted to do as a little girl and being Nancy Drew. Now, and then she went on to talk about what she does as a data analyst. But just that little tiny story that she told that probably took, I don't know, 200 words, she created a memorable story that not only I remember, but a lot of other people that came across her profile. And so she stood out from the crowd. And anybody that read her story said, wow, she really knows how to connect with people. I want to know more. And so you want to make sure that you're looking to collect those stories. Think back about why you're passionate about why you do what you do. People are interested in your passion more than they're interested in your accomplishments in many cases. And by the way, I'm not going to short sell the accomplishments. They're just in a different section of your LinkedIn profile. So collect stories and make sure you test what stories are most effective with your audience. Am I going too fast? Should I pause and ask if there's any questions?
You're fine.
Okay, good. So your profile's incomplete or out of date. And all you have to do is go on LinkedIn. And if you scroll through 20 profiles, you're going to find out that many of those profiles have very little content on the profile. And so, you know, if somebody's looking for you as a business partner, as somebody that they could do business with, maybe they want to hire you, maybe it's a job situation, then give them a reason to do that. And the more complete your profile, and LinkedIn makes it really easy now. They rate the strength of your profile. They tell you, if you've got a good profile, a poor profile, an incomplete profile, or an all-star profile. So if you go through there, make sure that you have something in virtually every LinkedIn section. And depending on how you count the sections, there's either 12 or 14, but there's a lot of sections just beyond the beginning things there. And an incomplete profile, by the way, I bounced through a lot of things here. An incomplete profile gives a poor impression for a couple of reasons. One is you're not paying attention to detail. maybe you don't know how to use all of these features that are in LinkedIn. And a lot of times it might indicate that you're just out of date. And even if you're a young candidate, it may not work. Obviously, if you're an older candidate, it's a bigger deal because you certainly don't want to be showing yourself as outdated and not currently up on the technology. So when I talk about your profile lacks or doesn't contain the right keywords, or maybe even any keywords, keywords are really critical to your LinkedIn profile. And I'm going to talk just in this short 10 steps about 2 areas where they are super critical. But most people may not know what their keywords are. So if you look at keywords, you do this for search engine optimization. And if you want to be found not only on LinkedIn, but anywhere on the internet, LinkedIn happens to be the 4th highest ranked site on the internet. So virtually every search engine searches the content on LinkedIn very quickly. As a matter of fact, if you do things properly, you could be ranked number 1 or on the first page of LinkedIn organically in whatever your category is in less than 4 hours. In fact, typically in less than 20 minutes. But I don't like to oversell that. But it's really critical to know what the keywords are. And from an SEO perspective, the search engine optimization, I recommend going through what I call an ICP, which is your ideal client profile. What is your ideal client like? You know, what are the keywords that your ideal client would probably use to find you? And I recommend, if you've got a couple of really good ideal clients, you're going to hear this reinforced in another section, that you might interview them and ask them what they were looking for when they found you. You might even ask what sort of a search process they went through. And in most cases, I know in virtually every case that I've done this on behalf of clients, not only am I surprised, but the clients are surprised about how they were found. So make sure you don't do that from your perspective. So if you notice, that covers a little bit part of the second part there. You want to do it from your prospect's view, not yours. We really sometimes are the absolute worst at selecting the right keywords that people would use to find us. And that fits into the third one, and how to do your best customer. And I use best customer in quotes because not your biggest customer, because sometimes your biggest customer causes you way more problems than they're sometimes worth. You'd like to fire them in many cases. But if you've got a customer you really enjoy working with, they're profitable to you, and you'd like to have more customers like that, then find out from your best customers how they found you and what they were searching for, what problems you solved for them. And you're going to get keywords that that come out of that process. And oh, by the way, if you do that with your best customers, they like that. It's a good process, and you tend to get better engaged with them as well. So no custom URL. If you look at this, I show you the custom URL on top, which is mine. And then I sort of hacked up one that is non-custom. And if you notice, the top one, it's just my name. And generally, you're able to get just your name. Sometimes you have to be a little bit creative, and it might be the problem that you solve. But make sure it's something that's a little bit catchy, so it makes it sort of engaging for people to find. At that point in time, you're able to put that in a lot of places, you know, footer on your email, but a lot of online things as well, and it just makes you look more professional and more tech savvy. So this here is another big one. In fact, of the entire thing that we're going to talk about, this how to fine tune your LinkedIn profile, this is probably the #1 thing that you want to really focus on. Most people use the default LinkedIn headline. In fact, A lot of people don't even know that you could change the headline. And your headline, what is that? That's the section right under your name. The default is whatever your current position is at your current company, and that comes from your experience section. So if you go to the top of your experience section, if you haven't customized this, it's going to be your position in your company. Well, that's sort of a waste of really valuable space here. If they want to see your current position, your current company, they could absolutely scroll down to your experience section, and they will. But this is one area of LinkedIn that Google spiders, and I'll use a different term, that Google searches and ranks the results very quickly. That's what the spidering process is. And they do this literally in a matter of minutes. This is where I say if you want to rank, remember we talked about keywords, you use the right keywords in here, but you make an engaging statement that will allow the clients to say, just looking at your headline, you know, I'm interested in that and I want to know more. As a matter of fact, I was looking through my messages today. Just from my headline, I had 3 messages of people that were saying, wow, I see what you do just from your profile. And I guarantee you they did a search there because they used virtually these same words. And they said, I would like to know more. I mean, that's perfect where you've got clients based on your LinkedIn profile that are coming to you and saying, can you tell me more? You have 120 characters to use here. You want to try to use them all, but remember to use the keywords if you can, but make a statement that reads, you know, in regular plain English. Don't try to just keyword stuff it because it doesn't make sense. You want people to read it and engage with you. But as I said, Google, which is the biggest search engine, is going to look at this and they're going to rank you on this in minutes. And they will position you on a Google search based on that. So that's pretty powerful stuff. The number 7 issue is you have no recommendations and or no endorsements. And a lot of people are uncomfortable on how to approach that, but don't be embarrassed to ask for them. Except when you ask for them, offer to make it easy for the person that you ask. Offer to write the endorsement or recommendation for them, but make sure that they know it's absolutely subject to their approval. So you want them to review it. If they're comfortable with what you said, yeah, absolutely. You know, give me that recommendation or give me that endorsement. And we don't have enough time, I don't think, to go through the difference between recommendations and endorsements, but I'll give you a real quick one. The recommendations are literally the verbiage that you're going to write. The endorsements are areas that you have expertise in. So you could have up to 99 areas of endorsements. They're only going to show the top 50. And recommendations, it's nice to have them in a couple of different areas. We absolutely don't have time to go through the different areas that they could be in, but you want to make sure that they are on your profile. So the other thing that people do is if you look at their profile, it reads like a resume. Now, this goes back to make sure you tell some stories and you just don't tell a bunch of facts. So the experience section is where, you know, it's what was my job, what was my position, and some of the key facts about that position, and that's facts. So there's not a lot of stories there. To the extent that you could put some stories there, great. But that's where that's going to go. The About Me section, which is where most people stop reading if you don't do a good job. You've got 2,000 characters there. And this is the second most powerful area on your LinkedIn profile. Because just like that headline, the second thing that Google looks at and evaluates is this About Me section on your LinkedIn profile. So you want to make sure you have the keywords in there that you determine that people use to search for you. You want to make sure you weave them into the story that's there that makes sense. But tell a good story or two about why you. why are you the best candidate for whatever it is they're looking at, why you're passionate, why are you passionate, yeah, okay, about what you do. In addition, if you really want a resume, LinkedIn provides a free resume builder. All you've got to do is type in resume builder, and they've got like 10 or 12 different formats, and they will build your resume strictly from your LinkedIn profile. So if you really focus on doing a good LinkedIn profile, you could have an up-to-date resume at the push of a button, which is sort of a nice thing to do there. Excuse me. Number 9, and this is one that's a little fascinating. I track this each year, and these words don't change a lot, but people like to use, and I usually do my list of the top 100, but obviously for space we did the top 10. These are words that if you go through most LinkedIn profiles, you will find that are most common on the profiles. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to make yourself stand out and be found and be the #1 candidate. And generally that doesn't happen when your profile looks a lot like everybody else's. So LinkedIn and a number of other sources, I think Forbes goes through a process where they rank each year the most common or frequently used terms or words on LinkedIn profiles. And it's worth looking at that and just making sure that you try to use fewer of those buzzwords than maybe you might be tempted to. So you just go through and look for them. I haven't updated my list lately, but as I said, those lists are commonly available online. They're easy to find. And last but not least, if it's you want to make it very, very easy. You don't want to make it difficult for anyone to contact you with any potential opportunities, or you don't have your profile set to public. Now, if you notice, just under my name and just under my headline and where I'm located, there's a button there that says contact info. And if I click on that button, you'll notice it'll pop out and all of the contact information is there. It is amazing how many people don't have the contact information right there. Make it easy for people to find you and contact you. And of course, you could see my address right there at Rising Tide. So I make it easy to be found, and I use absolutely, positively the best address in St. Petersburg to be used. I see you smiling, Lee. That was just a sales pitch for you. And as I said, tell them what I'm going to tell them, and tell them what I told them. So make sure you've got a good photo. Make sure your summary, which is that 2,000 words about me section, make sure it's engaging. Tell some stories. Don't just have facts there. In fact, really, I recommend don't have any facts there. They're going to go down if you do the right job of saying, tell me more, or getting them to say that, I should say. They're going to read into your experience section, and they're going to get all the facts that they need. Make sure your profile is complete. Make sure your profile has keywords. Make sure that you customize that URL if you haven't. Make sure you use the non-default headline. Remember, that's 120 characters of what I refer to as SEO gold. And it should be a nice, intelligent statement that has some keywords in there that your people that are going to find you, want to do business with you, are going to look for. Make sure you have recommendations and endorsements. Don't have your profile read like a resume. Make it engaging. Remember, the one goal is tell me more. That's what you want to leave everybody that reads your profile saying. Avoid those smart words or the buzzwords, and make it easy for anyone to contact you with potential opportunities. Or if you've got your LinkedIn profile as private, switch it to public. That being said, look at that, 30 minutes, and I'm ready to take questions.
I have a question.
Absolutely.
Okay, so what would you recommend if you're like me and you have multiple kind of target clients across different areas? And I know you're kind of similar in terms of having multiple interests. Would you focus your profile just on one of those kind of professional things, or would you try and mix it all together?
So if you could tell, and I think you can, um, and I'm not excluding anybody else in this answer, but I'm going to talk specifically to you because there's a common problem that you and I probably have. I'm an expert witness in some litigation stuff that goes on. And one of the things that I find is they love to spend a lot of time on my LinkedIn profile, and they being the attorneys, typically opposing counsel. Um, so I don't know that you ever get into that situation, but from a legal standpoint, your profile gets looked at differently. But to the extent that you have the story about why you're in the different areas you're in, you've told me a little bit of your story, and I think it works together well. So if you could tell a story that makes sense and it's sort of integrated together and it talks about the different things you do and sort of how you got there, then I would say put it all in one profile. If you can't, then even though it violates LinkedIn's terms of service, I recommend doing multiple profiles. The only problem with multiple profiles is people probably know you one way, by one name. And that makes it a little bit confusing to your ultimate consumer. But you have to sort of weigh that against getting some SEO results and having people find you that way. So can you do two profiles? Yeah. What I'd recommend is, one profile is first and last name. Second profile may be your first name initial and last name. It's slight difference. If they look for you, they're going to find you one way or the other. But
All right, thank you.
that would be the recommendation.
Yeah, it was very helpful to hear. It's Loretta. It was very helpful to hear you talk about storytelling versus having it look like it's a resume. And also, I think that I'm well aware that my LinkedIn needs to be updated. So hence, that's why I'm here. So it was really good to hear those areas that are important. And I thank you for that. I had a similar question as to what Lee had, but you answered it for me. And I think that was really good information. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome. The one thing that you want to be very careful of is not creating confusion. If you could avoid the confusion between the two profiles, you're fine. But a confused mind, as they say, never buys. So if you're leading people to confusion before they ever get engaged with you, it's not a good position to be in.
Yeah, I'm going to choose to just have one, and then I'm going to choose to leverage what you were talking about in terms of storytelling. I think that's a great suggestion, and that gives me something more to work with. And I don't know how. It's funny because I often wondered, how I missed the contact button. And so it just goes to show that, if we take a little time and look at things, it makes life a little bit easier. So I'll definitely be updating my own, and I've got some work to do. So thank you. This was very helpful to me.
You're welcome. And I could tell you, this scratches the surface. It really does on what you can do with LinkedIn. But here's the important thing, and I sincerely mean this. If you just follow those 10 suggestions, you will have a profile in the top 1 to 2% of everybody on LinkedIn.
Absolutely.
Because people don't follow those suggestions. And so that gives you a winning profile, just following those simple 10 things that and I know we covered it in a half hour. It certainly takes longer than that to implement because I've worked on just the headline at various times for as much as 2 or 3 hours. So,
Sure.
and by the way, I didn't mention this going through it because we went through fast, but the other thing that I do about
Mhm.
once a month is I change something in my headline or
That, yeah,
something in my
that's,
About Me section.
that's good. Yeah, because it shows it's updated, right?
It,
Something triggers.
it shows it's updated. It posts to everybody that you're connected to automatically again because you did an update.
Yeah.
And you might then look if you get different results on a Google search for the various keywords that you're trying to be found for, because you'll find you could get into the #1 or #2 or #3 organic position, and
Right.
a month later you may not be there because somebody modified certain things on their profile or their website or whatever it may be, and they kicked you out of that spot.
Got it. Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Thank you so much. I don't have any additional questions on my end.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, this was a good way to kick us off of the virtual sessions at Rising Tide.
Yeah, thank you so much,
Absolutely.
Nile. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
You're welcome. Well, thank you all very much. And if there's no other questions, first off, if there are other questions, I'll be happy to stick around and answer them. But if there's no other questions, I'll just say thank you.
Thank you. I know where to find you.
You sure do. I'm there a lot.
So, all right. Thanks. Thanks so much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Nam. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Juan.
Of course.